Today we're going to drop the red pill on feminism, anti-racism, and the LGBTQ plus community, or whatever it is. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on it because I think fortunately the red pill is being dropped a lot these days on these things, and they're really very concerning cultural phenomenons is the best way to describe them. I'm only going to go over that briefly. Then I'm going to drop the white pill, because one of the beautiful things about the white pill, it is the same white pill that resolves them all. But first I'd like to say that the vast majority of people involved in these are well-intentioned, good people trying to make the world a better place. But I think without this element being applied, which I will speak of at the end of the video, this part of the white pill, which I speak of a lot, things always go astray. And it is simply to learn the lesson that if we do not apply this white pill, the things we care about deeply will become, they will rot, they will become rancid things. And I think this is an important lesson to learn because it's applicable across many things we struggle with. But the good news is the white pill is full of good news. It is not that complicated to understand how to resolve it all. And that once you understand how to resolve one of these, you understand how to resolve many of them, you know. So let's take a look at anti-racism. Quite simply, you know, the horrors that it's brought about, this movement. You know, Stockport killings, the Manchester Arena bombing, Henry Newark, the Nottingham situation, and even the horrors of mass migration, all facilitated through this anti-racism movement that just shuts down dialogue, shuts down looking at things clearly, shuts down free speech and everything like this. So it really is a vile cult. That's what I call it, because you know, really you have to be a part of it, because if you're not an anti-racist, or what are you? You're something terrible. So it's just a little game that it plays, and you can't question it. You go, well, anti-racism is bad. It's a bad movement. You can't question it. Well, you can question it, and you don't have to be a part of it. I think it's a disgusting, vile cult. This cultural phenomenon, this anti-racism, just the horrors that it has put on the world. I just mentioned a few of them. So that's the anti-racism stuff. Then let's talk about the LGBTQ plus community. Well-intentioned, good idea. I think we're all what it pretends to be. We'll say, oh, that's pretty good, you know, people being treated fairly and so on. But what does it become in reality? You know, hates women, very homophobic in reality, doesn't care about protecting children, puts children at risk of psychological harm and child abuse. You know, something really vile it's become. You know, not all of it, of course not. But what I'm saying is, as if you were to look at it all, say, are you a part of this? I wouldn't touch it, because it's so disgusting. But what it is, and again, we break down why this is happening, how to prevent it, and how to recover it. And then let's look at feminism, and absolutely another disgusting movement, a cult again, obviously, because you can't not be one, because it claims to be this wonderful, good intention thing. So everybody, you know, if you're not one, like, oh, you're bad. And you're not allowed to question it, which are the two hallmarks of cults. And these are all three. They've all become cults now. Terrible, vile things. Feminism hates women, oppresses women, doesn't tell women the truth about choices and consequences. Bad for women in terms of mental health outcomes. Hatred of men, unbelievable. Doesn't like families. Doesn't really care about protecting kids. Bad for communities. And even destroys, bad for nations, and even at this stage it's risen to such a level that it's a civilization death cult in its impact. So truly vile. So we've looked at them now, and we kind of haven't gone into too much depth, because that's not what the video is really about, because there's lots of other videos out there exposing these. So that's the red pill. You know, that's the blue pill is that, oh, they're wonderful, they're good, they're great, you know, And of course, they use that blue pill to say, oh, you're against it. How could you be against these things? These things are wonderful. And how could you question it? That's terrible to question it. That's the blue pill. Of course, the red pill then actually takes a look and says, well, this is horrific. These are vile. So what's the white pill? Well, the white pill is simply understanding that organizational disease is real and we need to apply organizational hygiene universally. And when we stop applying organizational hygiene, things always start to decay, start to rot, and eventually become something rancid. Something that it works very hard to pretend to be something good, but in truth it is just harmful and rancid. And that is in the absence of organizational hygiene. And if you look at all of these three cults that I talked about there, questioning is not okay. You have to go with the line, being outside of it, disagreeing, leaving, there's a lot of work goes in to prevent organizational hygiene from being present in them. So what is organizational hygiene? Well, as I said, it is the antidote to organizational disease, which is inherent in the human species, just like physiological diseases. And it's just some simple factors that we can observe. When these are present, organizations tend to stay very healthy. And when they're not, they have a huge tendency just really to quickly deteriorate and become something rancid. And what are they? Well, transparency, accountability, feedback, permission, intellectual courage, moral courage, and integrity. So if we were to start applying, if we were to start scrubbing away at these three vile cults, let's have some transparency. What's actually going on? What's accountability? Who's actually writing this stuff? Who's actually accountable to say this is what's going on? And let's have feedback, permission. Like, what is the purpose? Well, is the purpose of it is to that people do better, that there's more things in the world? Okay, let's look at it with the accountability and the transparency. Let's really look at the feedback. Is this actually making the world a better place? Are people better off? Is it accomplishing what it pretends? Does it even have a mission? Does it even know what it's about? Or is it just something, vague? And that's important. And then intellectual courage, which is the courage to question, the courage to say, I believe in this, but I'm open to people, looking into it and questioning it and answering questions and looking at things from first principles, and that intellect, which is totally absent when you can't question it. If you question it, you're something horrible. Moral courage, the courage to actually care, the courage to say, what, there's some concerns here that what the ideology, the approach we're taking, the things we're supporting is actually opening the door to sexual assault, to the abuse of children, to the psychological damaging of teenagers, and so on. And having the moral courage to say, well, these are serious matters. We should be, we should be looking into it. We should have the courage to say, oh, well, if this is the case, we need to make some adjustments, or we certainly need to take it serious. That is moral courage. And again, these things are shut down. And then integrity is to be, what you say you're about is what you're about. And if you look at all these things, they really go out of their way to make sure there is no organizational hygiene going on, really. And of course, we know on a deeper level, we understand the predators in society and how they groom organizations and how they systematically remove it and all that kind of stuff. But that's for a different video. But the point I'm making is that if you really care about these movements or whatever it is you're involved, and you were aware now of organizational hygiene and it's not present, you need to say, oh, this is unacceptable. I care about this. We need to have transparency about what we're doing. We need to have accountability. We need to have feedback. Permission. What are we trying to achieve? Can we measure it? Can we get information regarding, is this actually happening, or are we doing some damage? You need to have intellectual courage to say, look, we're going to talk about some stuff that we prefer not to talk about, or I'm going to be open to the idea that maybe things aren't as wonderful as I'd like them to be. We're going to understand it, get a look at the data, look at the policies, look at the impact. We're going to have open discussion. We're going to hear some alternative ideas. We're going to have intellectual courage in this process. We're going to have moral courage to care about people. We're going to have courage to look at the shadow side, because every organization, every movement, every cultural phenomenon has necessarily got a shadow side. The LGBTQ plus, the feminists movement, the anti-racist. Like at this stage, it is just because its shadow side has consumed its good side. Its shadow is so big because it didn't have the courage to look at its shadow and look into it, the darkness, and look into the harm it does, and say, oh, we need to address this. We need to make some adjustments. And it's just been consumed by its own shadow at this stage because it doesn't have, as I say, the organizational hygiene. And the integrity, of course, is to say, here's what we're saying we're about. You could say they're all kind of considered as progressive, right? So let's have a bit of intellectual courage and look at what it means to be. It means people are better off. The world is better, safer. Children are safer. Women are safer. People are more prosperous. There's a higher trust in the community. All these factors. Um, that would have integrity for a progressive movement. But they've gotten rid of that. They just said, oh, change is progressive. You know, whatever the change is moving, anti the system is progressive. No, that's just change. That's just tearing something down, and that's just change. That could be extremely detrimental. It could be very regressive. It could be bringing us to very dark places. So that's the whole lack of integrity when you call something progressive. You can only call it progressive if you're measuring the impact it's having. And that requires integrity. And these organizations, they don't have any. They have hardly any of these concepts of organizational hygiene that I've spoken about. And that is not an accident. We know the predators are out there, and we know that they like every good cause. They like the prestige, they like the profit, they like the privilege, they like all this stuff, and they want to go in and harvest all that. And so the predators get involved early on. And if there isn't organizational hygiene, they quickly infiltrate, groom, and colonize the organizations and so on. And this is just a process that happens over again. But the cool thing is that all of this bad stuff happens in the absence of organizational hygiene, which we should be using kind of as a universal precaution in all these organizations. And we should know if it's not present. And it's quite easy once you're aware just to go through those lists. Are these present in this organization? And if they're not present, you know what? It's probably already well on its way to being something that it's not. Something other than what it is saying that it is. It could be quite rancid at this stage. And now we can be aware, we can be awake to the white pill and realize these qualities of organizational hygiene are absolutely necessary across all these organizations and cultural phenomena. And especially if we care deeply about things, we should be, instead of being groomed to actually be advocates to get rid of organizational hygiene, which a lot of people are, you should actually say, no way, we're going to have the tough talk. We're going to have integrity. We're going to have feedback for what we're doing. We're going to have moral and intellectual courage. There will be transparency, accountability in this organization because you care about what it's about, because in the absence of those things, everything goes very astray. Is the red pill dropping now? Absolutely. Is the white pill dropping? No, there's no real talk of it. I think people occasionally say, oh, it would be good if we had better accountability. It would be good if there was some of this there. But only as in, like, when things get really bad, we might apply a little bit of it. And that's not the white pill. The white pill says that we should be applying this universally across our organizations, cultural phenomena, and so on. And we should be anything that gets in the way that needs to be, we need to make sure that we don't fall for that trap. And that would be the white pill. So the white pill has not landed yet. But hopefully, the red pill that's great that, 5-10 years ago, the red pill was not really being dropped, but now it is all over the place. But hopefully in time, the white pill will be dropped as well. Instead of saying we need to improve accountability, we need to do this when things get really bad, but actually we need to be having these elements of organizational hygiene when everything is good. Like, in your house, you keep hygiene in your house. You don't wait till things get really bad to say, I might need to do a bit of bleach to get rid of some of this mold. You keep an eye on it. When it begins to get out of hand, you're constantly, airing the house and doing things and taking care of it. And that's how we need to think of organizational hygiene too. If we want to get a bit deeper, we could understand the origin of organizational disease, just like physiological disease has an origin and it's inherent in the species, and we just need to have suitable measures to manage it, and that it's very measurable. You can look at organizations with poor organizational hygiene and you can empirically measure and see what a mess they are, and what kind of outcomes they are, and what they're like to work in, and what kind of an impact they have. And you can see organizations that have really good organizational hygiene and how they perform and how different they are and how they really are the kind of charities, the kind of governmental bodies we want, the kind of cultural movement we want, all have good organizational hygiene because they make the place better. Nobody wants organizational disease. It's a terrible thing, a very real thing, and we can observe it all the time. So yeah, I hope. I'm so happy the red pill is dropping on these things. That's great. And I think when the white pill drops, I think okay. So there is a resolution to this. There is a learning here. History does not have to be repeating itself. And we see one good cause after the other all becoming rotten because, as I said, these predators are attracted to good causes because they can create some money and they can create some profit and they can create some prestige and privilege, and power and so on. And maybe one day we'll live in a society that's awoken up to the significance of organizational hygiene being applied as a universal precaution. So that's the white pill. And I mean, the good news is it may take a decade or two. As the red pill drops and we question it, we begin to look at, well, how are we going to deal with this? And it may take a decade or two, and that's just how change happens. But also, it could happen tomorrow. We could all just decide as people to say, okay, I get it now. Oh, now I understand organizational disease a bit better. Now I understand organizational hygiene has to be applied as a universal precaution across, as I said, as across all of these cultural phenomena, charities, governments, communities, faith communities, so on. And we could all just be aware of that and say, okay, let's do this. And when we're a part of communities and when we're part of organizations, we could be advocates for this. And when we have positions of maybe we're writing policies or we're doing things, we can just make this our day-to-day kind of how we operate in life. And I think that's when the white pill will have dropped, and that will be wonderful. A lot of terrible things will be avoided, and the world will work a lot better. So yeah, hope you got something from that. Drop a comment. Let's talk about it. If you're on board with me, I'm ready to do this. If you're on board with me, get in touch. Let's collaborate. Let's work on this. Let's create some collaboration. Let's figure out some project, something we can do to move this forward. Because that is once we become aware, we can take individual actions and do things. But once we become aware and other people are aware of this white pill, we can use this wonderful superpower of the human species, which is this thing called collaboration. So get in touch. I'm ready to make this happen. And if you are too, let's start working together. Let's do something wonderful.